Hello and welcome. I had a client recently. We jumped on a call and she was doing a TEDx talk. And she said, I want to talk about women in leadership and human trafficking and women's access to politics and education and financial equality for women and all the scientific advancements that women are creating in the world. And the list went on and on and on. And it was amazing. I was like, wow. Number one, absolutely, we should be talking about these things. These are conversations that absolutely should be going on in the world. Completely, wholeheartedly get behind that. On the other hand, we've got 18 minutes in which to get a very clear message across to a TEDx audience, an audience that are listening to multiple speeches in one day or over a series of days. So we need to make that speech memorable, impactful, and absolutely authentic. So we had this really interesting challenge of kind of puzzling it down and working out how we were going to get all these ideas across in 18 minutes. And we did. And we did it very well. Well, she actually did it in the end, but we worked together to get there. So it is absolutely possible to talk about the things that you are passionate about, even if that's a huge range of things, and pull it together into an 18-minute, coherent, effective, impactful speech that is authentically you with the right kind of help. So today we're going to be talking about the 5 things that you can do to completely nail a TED-style speech. And there are 5 really, really important things. What these are, I would call them first principles. So when I've worked with TED speakers across the years, across different topics, different theories, different ideas, from academic institutions to corporate ones to leadership ones, it doesn't matter what the content is. There are fundamental principles that apply to whatever talk you are giving. And I'm going to talk about those 5 fundamental principles today that are really going to help you nail creating and delivering a TEDx style speech. And one of the things that's really important about these style of talks is they are a form of thought leadership. And if you watched any of my videos, you will know that I'm a big fan of thought leadership. So thought leadership, it can come in many forms, in the written form, interviews, podcasts, but a TED style talk is kind of like, I guess, the pinnacle of thought leadership. It's easily accessible by people who want to watch it, listen to it. They can see the transcript. It's a great way of communicating some really fundamental ideas that you have across to a mass audience. But why is thought leadership important? Well, let's look at it from 2 perspectives. Let's look at it at a corporate area, and let's look at it also from an entrepreneurial perspective, because those are the 2 areas of people that I tend to work with when it comes to a TED style talk. So if you're in a corporate space, 58% of anybody who works in a corporate space says they engage with thought leadership for about an hour every week. So every week they are listening to podcasts, they are reading articles, they are watching YouTube videos, they're watching TED videos. They're engaging with some kind of thought leadership during their working week to do with work and sometimes beyond their area of expertise. Now, 51% of all corporate environments say that they use this as a form of vetting when they're employing new people. So you're applying for a job, you've been through the interview process, you're getting quite high up on that list, they're shortlisting. They're going to start looking around and looking into your thought leadership. So what have you written? Where have you spoken? What have you been talking about? As a way to see what your stance is in their particular area of the marketplace, and to see what you're like as an individual. Do you demonstrate executive presence? Are you the kind of person that's going to really benefit their organization? Now, once they've done that, 81% of those people say that their trust in the individual that they've listened to or watched increases. And that is absolutely vital, because we really want to be moving anybody and everybody that we interact with along that know, like, and trust pathway. So they need to feel that they can get to know you, that they can get to like you, and that they can get to trust you. Because if they don't feel that they can get to know and like you, they can't move towards trust. And we will never spend any time, energy, or money with anybody that we don't feel like we can trust. So it's a really important underlying piece to develop trust with individuals that we haven't yet met. And the more that we can do that, when people do interact with us, they're like, oh yes, I heard your piece on such and such, it was really interesting. You've got a kind of common ground. You've already started the process of that knowing, liking and trusting. So thought leadership is really, really important. Now, if you're working as an entrepreneur and you're building your business, then thought leadership is an incredible way to start building the personal and professional brand for your business. And if you're looking to scale or get investment, it's absolutely critical that you are out there and that you are talking about what you're doing in a thought leadership capacity. And the difference between thought leadership and just talking about what you do is that when we're just talking about what we do, we're giving information, and information is readily available. We've got information. We touch of a button, we have so much information. That isn't actually helpful anymore, because we're getting to a point where we don't know whether what we're reading is truth, is it spin. We can look at several different articles and maybe the core of some things are the same, but there's lots of things that are different. So we don't necessarily completely trust that information anymore. And also we're just overwhelmed with it, and it's not helpful. So when we're doing something like a piece of thought leadership, what we're actually looking for is fresh, innovative ideas, a new way of looking at information that we already have. We're also looking for synthesis. So we want somebody to synthesize all the information that's out there through a particular lens, and then we want insight. So if we look at the issue or the problem or the situation from this particular perspective with this particular lens, what's the insight that we can gather from there? That is what people want to hear, insight. It's a shortcut to really being able to apply what we've learned. Now, if we can do insight, that's brilliant. If we can do foresight, even better. So that's looking to the future, saying, okay, this is where we are now. This is what's happening. This is the way this particular area, this particular industry, this particular topic is moving. This is where we're going to come to in the future. This is going to be the crossroads that we get to. This is going to be the crunch point. This is going to be the crisis that we're going to get to. And to avoid impact from that, what we're going to be doing in the next wee while is X, Y, and Z. That's foresight. That's helping people future-proof their lives, their businesses, their organizations, whatever it might be. So it's vital that we can provide at least insight. At best, we can do foresight, which is going to really, really help people see your value and your ability to look at this situation. But it is also going to help them prevent maybe crisis or disaster or stress in their organizations or their businesses or their lives. So that's really what we're looking to. And if you can do that, then you're really going to build know, like, and trust with the people that are listening or watching you. So as I said, I've worked with lots and lots of people over many, many years on TED speeches. I volunteer at various organizations to help people build their TED talks. And also I have clients who come to me and we work together on a one-to-one basis or a group basis to build their TED talk. So I've seen lots of people's ways of doing it. I've seen lots of the mistakes that people have made. And I'm going to talk to you today again about those 5 principles, those 5 sort of first principles that I see to create success, that I have seen my clients create successes from, because they understood what they needed to do. And we worked from these 5 principles, and it just created incredible impact. It created speeches that were memorable and impactful and authentic. So it really felt like it was this person talking, not that they were giving a speech. And I think one of the biggest successes that we've had so far, one of the most exciting ones, maybe because it's just recent and it's exciting, but one of my clients is actually her video from her TEDx talk has been taken up by TED.com. So the proper TED are now circulating and promoting her video because of what she was talking about and because of the technology that we used to create her talk. She was holographically projected into the hall where the TEDx was happening from a different country entirely, which was super exciting. And she did an incredible job. So it's now being promoted by TED.com. So we're going to talk today about those 5 underlying principles that are going to really help you nail your thought leadership, your TEDx style talk. And that could be for TEDx.com. It could be for any other meeting, event, organization. It could be part of your social media. There are many, many ways that you can use this thought leadership approach, this talk, to really help raise your visibility and your credibility, either within your organization or beyond, if that's where you're at. So what we can, those 5 principles, we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about themes. We're going to talk about metaphors, and we're going to talk about delivery in 2 different ways. So we're going to talk about delivery in terms of what you do with your body, and we're going to talk about delivery in terms of stagecraft, so how you use the stage. So we're going to kick off talking about you and why you are really, really important to this TED style talk. Now, I have had a client relatively recently pitch up with a perfectly scripted script. So it was really nicely done. And had they taken that script and gone off and done a TEDx, it would have been perfectly acceptable. It would have been fine, but it wouldn't have been particularly memorable. And it wouldn't have created the impact that she was looking for in terms of creating credibility for her business and her organization for what she did. And there was one really fundamental reason why that was. It was she was missing from the speech. So there was this beautiful speech, very important things that she was talking about, but she wasn't in the speech. She was missing. So I could have taken that speech, I could have handed it to another woman of a similar age, of a similar experience, and said, okay, you go do this speech at the next TEDx. And she would have done it, and it would have been fine. And it wouldn't have mattered who had delivered that speech. And that's the really, really important thing. It has to matter that it's you delivering this speech. So what we needed to do was deconstruct her speech, really bring her experience into those stories, into those ideas. And it raised her credibility immensely. And it helped us move along that know, like, and trust pathway. So you really need to be in your speech. And we need to see and hear your journey. So how did you get from where you were to where you are? And why is that relevant to what you're talking about? So we really want to understand your journey. And then the second part of that is we want to understand your experience. So what was it like going through that journey? How did it affect you, particularly from a sort of pragmatic perspective? So what were the things that you did and didn't do that perhaps you now realize you should or shouldn't have done? But also from a mindset perspective. So what were the things that you were thinking that had really helped you? What were the things that you were thinking that didn't help you? Now, the reason that's important for the audience that are listening to you, do you remember that idea about insight? Is that you're giving us insight. You're giving us insight, but you're also potentially giving us a framework. Now, frameworks mean that we, as an audience, are a little bit lazy occasionally. We love to know the shortcut. And by giving us your experience, practical mindset, that framework, what you're doing is allowing us to shortcut if we ever find ourselves in a similar predicament. So that could be, we might see the problem coming that you encountered. And so we know it for what it is before it arrives. Or we may not do that. We may end up in the same predicament, but we've got your shortcut, your way of getting out of this predicament much more quickly, which we wouldn't have had you not shared your experience with us. So one of the reasons that you are really, really important in the story is that your experience can actually help and benefit others. Now, the second part of you that is really important to have in the story is your personality. And I have worked with everybody on the spectrum from the very introverted to the very extroverted, and they have all delivered amazing TEDx speeches. So where you are on the spectrum is irrelevant. So if you would describe yourself as highly introverted, it doesn't mean you can't go out and do an incredible TEDx speech. It does mean that your preparation will be slightly different. And it does mean that when you go away from that TED stage, you might need to lie down in a darkened room or have some real peace and quiet and find yourself a very tranquil or nourishing place to be, probably on your own for a little bit, just to recharge your battery. If you're extremely extroverted, your preparation process will be different and your wind down process will be different. So being introverted is not a reason not to do a TEDx speech. There have been some incredible speeches done at TED.com by introverted people, incredible speeches. So it's really important that your personality is truthful to you. So if you are introverted, we don't want to be trying to make you into an extremely extroverted speaker. It isn't going to work. It's going to look fake and your audience will pick it up in a second. So we really want it to be your voice, your energy, and your style of speaking in a way that your audience can access it. So we want it to be as authentic as possible. And if you find that you're being pushed to be something that you're not, then that isn't going to work. It's not going to work for you. You'll be exhausted by it. And it really isn't going to work for your audience because it won't land with them. They'll mistrust it slightly because they can hear and feel that something is slightly off. So if you're not present in your authentic way, and if you're not present in terms of your journey, your stories, your experience, practical and mindset, then the audience misses out on a huge and rich perspective that you could offer them. So one of the big mistakes that I see people do is that they're not there, they're not in their speech. So really, to nail a thought leadership piece, a TEDx style talk, you need to be fully present in the story, in the tale. Because if you are, your audience can connect with you much more quickly and your credibility will increase when we see you go through that journey. So the next thing, the second thing that you need to do to really, really nail your TED style speech or your thought leadership is to have a theme. So when I described that client at the beginning and she had all these many things that she wanted to talk about, actually, when we pulled it all apart, when we started to really kind of dig down underneath all these topics like women's access to education, financial independence for women, politics, women in leadership, human trafficking, actually, when we pulled all those things apart, we realized that underneath there were some very clear themes. And it was all to do with safety and allowing women or finding ways to help women to get safe. And there were 3 levels of safety that we were really talking about. So at the human trafficking level, really what we were talking about is physical safety. So we need to find ways to help women be physically safe in countries, in areas, from people who are making their lives unsafe and exposing them to scenarios where they can be hurt. So really we were talking about safety. Physical safety was the first thing because that's where the problems were beginning. And then as we spoke more, we realized actually the next bit is psychological safety. So if you feel psychologically safe, if you feel like you can discuss your issues, you can then start to access education. You can find ways to access education, and access to education means access to opportunity. So the first bit of safety was about physical safety. The second bit of safety is psychological safety and access to education. And the third bit is financial safety. So being able to have a job whereby you can support yourself, you can make choices about your life, you can decide what happens next, and then potentially getting into situations where you are leading teams or where you are in politics and you can start to affect what happens to other people. So you can see how those myriad of ideas, when we distill them down into very, very clear themes, they start to make much more sense. And we can talk in broad ways about all of those things that were important to my client when she arrived. So it's really, really important that we have those things because it's much easier for an audience to go away. So I'm sure you couldn't remember that list I gave you at the beginning, but perhaps by the end of this video, you will remember safety and women's access to safety. So physical safety, psychological safety, financial security. So by distilling it down and giving it a nice kind of context, that means it's much easier for you to remember. So for instance, to give you another example, when I do my thought leadership speech, I'm talking about women in leadership and communication specifically. But actually, if I distill it down, 2 of the big topics that I talk about are having a sense of enoughness, feeling like you're enough, you can speak, you know enough, you have a right to speak, you're enough in that moment, and self-trust, trusting yourself to succeed and trusting yourself when things don't go so wrong. And I don't like using this word, but for ease, fail. So when something goes wrong, you know that you can cope. Because if you've got those two things, if you feel like you're enough and you've got self-trust, you can become a really powerful communicator, because your boundaries start to firm up, and you can take risks that perhaps you wouldn't have taken otherwise, because you know you can cope. So whilst my broad topic is women in leadership and communication, I'm very specifically talking about self-trust and enoughness. So having a theme means it's much easier for your audiences to remember, much easier than all those ideas that we were talking about right back at the beginning. So if you really want to nail your thought leadership, have a very, very clear theme. What is it that you're really, really talking about? When you distill it down, what is it that you're talking about? Now, the next thing that can really, really help you nail a piece of thought leadership is a metaphor. So a metaphor is a way where you are tying everything together, right? As human beings, we're containers. Everything is contained within our skin. And conceptually, we like things that are contained. Time is a metaphor. Money is a metaphor. Everything is contained. So if you can give us a metaphor, we as human beings really, really, really like that. So for instance, the client that I was talking about, we had these ideas, these themes around safety. We had physical safety, psychological safety, and financial safety. But we really needed, so those were the things, we needed a metaphor. What was the metaphor that held all these ideas together? And what we came up with was actually ladder economics. So we had this idea, this image of a ladder leaning up against a wall and women placed variously up and down the ladder, helping women below up the ladder to the next rung, the next stage of safety. So for those people who were on the rungs of the ladder, they were helping women who weren't on the ladder, who didn't have physical safety, who were stuck in situations where they were being trafficked or they were being hurt by other people. We were trying to help them get onto the ladder, to get them physically safe. What were the things that needed to happen to help that occur? And then once they were on that rung of the ladder, how do we boost them up to get to psychological safety? And then how do we pull them up into financial security? So you can see, by having this theme of safety, and then by having the metaphor of the ladder and women helping women get themselves up or pull them up or find systems to create ways they could climb up the ladder themselves, you've got a far more impactful and memorable idea. So now, by the end of this video, I'm sure you're going to remember the idea of ladder economics and how that helps the individual, but also, more importantly, how it helps the society overall. As a society, if that was happening, and the other 50% of our population, the women, were able to contribute in work, were able to access education, were able to create incredible scientific discoveries, we were going to find solutions to some of the world problems that we don't yet have solutions to. So you could see that far-reaching impact. Now, I'm sure you're going to remember the idea of ladder economics when this video is over. The other thing that really makes an impact in these thought leadership type speeches is verbal beauty. So using things like onomatopoeia and alliteration, it can really, really help the sort of verbal beauty and the memorability of what you've just said. The rule of three is also a fantastic way of creating impact. So with the idea of safety, we had those three bits of safety: physical, psychological, and monetary safety or financial security. So anything that comes in threes, we tend to remember. If you look around now and look at advertising, you'll find huge amounts of really memorable advertising is just three letters. So the most obvious one is Nike. Just do it. Just do it. Three words. Very, very impactful. So easy to remember. So things that come in threes, we really, really like. 3, 5, and 7 are the good numbers for people remembering. So having a metaphor, having verbal beauty, creating a container for your theme is really, really impactful. It makes it memorable. And you want your speech to live when you finish talking, when you leave that room, when you leave that auditorium. You want people to have your speech living on in their minds. They share those ideas with people outside that room. Now, the final two things that are going to really help you nail your thought leadership, to help you nail your TEDx style talk, are to do with delivery. So I'm going to talk about delivery in terms of how you use your body, your breath, and your voice, first of all. So when you walk onto that stage, when you walk onto that little red carpet, wherever it might be, you need to have a confident, aligned body posture, one that's really open, really relaxed, and absolutely present to your audience. One that's saying, hey, I'm here to share something really interesting with you. You're offering an invitation for them to join you in the world of your experience for whatever long. So it could be 10 minutes, it could be 15 or 18 minutes, depending on the style of speech that you're giving. So making sure that you're opening your body and your body posture is saying, listen, I've got something really super interesting to share, and I love you to share it with me in the next few minutes. Now, breathing is a very important part of what your audience sees when they see you walk onto that stage. So we want the breath to be low, deep, and really connected with your voice, because the opposite is shallow, high, and disconnected. So we get this kind of like nervous rabbit in a headlight feeling. Now, if you walk onto a stage and that is going on, even at a very, very subtle level, your audience will pick it up and they will sense your anxiety, and then they start to feel anxious, not really understanding why they feel a little bit uncomfortable. So body open, relaxed, and present, breath deep and low and connected. And then your voice. So it needs to be relaxed and engaging. So we're using this lovely kind of vocal landscape that we have access to. So your voice is moving up and down, that you're telling your story, and it's congruent with the message. So your voice is moving to support the content in absolutely the right kind of way, because if it's moving in opposition to the content, your audience will be confused. They won't know whether they're listening to the words or to the tone of voice. And if you've ever been in any relationship ever, you will know that the tone of voice always is superior to the content. So you listen to the tone, you don't hear the words. If you think about, your best friend says they're fine, they're probably not fine. So that's really, really important in delivery: body, breath, voice. And if you can get those three things really well coordinated, it will elevate your message and it will create far greater impact with your audience, because it'll be easier for them to digest and remember your message. Now, the fifth thing is also to do with delivery, but it's delivery on a bigger scale. So we're going to be talking about stagecraft. So how do you use a stage? Now, if you don't have a red carpet, if you're just presenting your thought leadership to a group of people, you've got the whole stage to use. So that's pretty exciting. If you're doing a TEDx type speech, you will have the red carpet and you need to stay on the red carpet. And I'm sure they will direct you there. But what tends to happen is if you step off the red carpet, your video will be disqualified and it won't be put onto the site and you won't get promotion. So we really want to be staying on that red carpet, but using that space in the best way possible. And we can use that space to talk to the audience about status, about our relationship with them, and about time. So depending on where we stand will give us status. So imagine that you came on for your talk and you stand right at the back of your, at the farthest edge back of your red carpet. What that indicates to the audience is my status is not as important as yours. You are superior to me and I am inferior to you because I'm standing back. So really, we want to be making sure that we're equalizing the status between us and the audience, saying, listen, I'm going to talk for a few minutes. I'd love it if you listen. It would be so wonderful if you lent me your ears, because I might have something that's really super useful. So we want to be equalizing the status between you as the speaker and the audience as the listener. Where we stand on that carpet will also determine our relationship, the intimacy of that particular relationship. So again, if we stand further away, it would indicate that our relationship is not particularly intimate. So as you get into the nitty gritty of your speech, or as you get into your calls to action, or as you get into a bit where you might be sharing something that's a bit more vulnerable, the closer you stand to your audience, the more you're saying to the audience, our relationship is becoming more intimate. I'm going to share something with you. So maybe moving towards them might be really, really important. And there's lots of subtle differences in areas where you can move around in that way. And we can also indicate time. Time is a great way of physically moving around your red carpet can indicate time, the passage of time. And that can really help your audience understand where they are. Okay, in the beginning, we were over here. Now in the middle of the story, we're here. Now we're going to move to the future. So it can really help them understand where we are, because maybe we need to go back to the beginning at some point, and we know that that sits over here. So really learning to use the stage in an effective way is such an important part of delivering a really effective speech, because you could write a beautiful, incredible speech where you are present, where your themes are really clear, where you've got beautiful metaphors. But if we don't go out there and deliver it in an authentic and memorable and impactful way, chances are it isn't going to get remembered. So we need both of those things. We need the creation and the curation of an incredible script, but then it has to be delivered in a way that is really, really impactful. So I hope that you found today really useful, thinking about those 5 fundamental principles that will create success in any piece of thought leadership. You need to be present. There needs to be very, very clear themes. We need to have clear metaphors to help your audience remember what it is you're talking about. Remember, ladder economics. You need to speak in a way that your body, your breath, and your voice are all congruent and connected to you in terms of where you are on that introverted, extroverted scale, but also to the content that you're delivering as well. And then you need to use that stage really impactfully so that your audience can really make sense of what it is you're saying, that you're showing them the status that you and they have, that you are determining how intimate or not your relationship is with them, that you're showing them how time is moving through your speech. And if you use your stage really effectively, it really just helps your audience understand your message that much more quickly. And it keeps their interest as well if you're moving around just a small amount congruently with the content too. I trust that you found today's video really, really helpful. I love talking about TED Talks. Could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. If you want to see what your executive presence, because some of what we've been talking about today is about having that executive presence. If you want to have a look and do a self-assessment on how good your executive presence is, we have this amazing new scorecard, which you can do a self-assessment on, looking at what areas you're already using executive presence with and where you need to pivot and use it in other areas in your business or in your career. So the link is down below. If you have enjoyed today's video and you are interested to talk to me about actually doing a TED Talk, please, there's a link below. We can have a coffee chat and I would love to talk to you about your ideas. Whether you think you're ready right now or whether you think you might be ready next year, let's have a chat and we can talk about where you're at, what you might need to do and how to progress forward so that this idea will gain momentum over the coming months and years. Take care, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye for now.